The VidPhone picture changed from Gunther's face to a high-angle black and white image. An overweight woman tossing and turning on her bed, heavy black hair covering much of her face. Colden could see her lips moving, see her look of fear. There would be no going back to sleep this time. Okay, Gunn, I'll go take care of her. He hit the disconnect button and the screen went black. Colden slid out of his bed, his bare feet hitting the frigid floor. No matter how high they turned up the temperature, the floor remained perpetually ice cold. He stepped into his ratty flip-flops, pulled on a robe, and slid a small earpiece onto his left ear. He tapped the earpiece once, turning it on. Gunther, radio check. Got you, boss. Okay, I'm on my way. Holler if she comes out of it before I get there. Golding left his Beretta in the nightstand drawer. No need for the gun. He headed for Jean's. Her bleeding fingers had turned the Panda from black and white to black and red. Panda body, tiger arm, sock monkey leg, lion leg, plastic baby doll arm, and the black head with a mouthful of pointy teeth. Her possessed hands held the strange creation, a misshapen, mismatched Dr. Seuss Frankenstein. Not again, Jean's little girl voice whispered. Please, not again. She begged. But like watching a familiar old rerun, she knew what would come next. She started screaming a moment too early, just before the black eyes fluttered open and looked right at her. Primitive, unfeeling, but clearly hungry. Something shook her. The hodgepodge stuffed animal opened its arms and seemed to smile. The devil smiled. Mismatched arms, baby doll plastic pink and tiger stripe orange and black, reached up and out for her. Just as the creature opened its mouth to bite, that something shook her even harder. Colden gently shook Jean one more time. She blinked awake, the expression of terror still fixed on her confused face. Sweat and tears matted her silky black hair against her skin. Jean, it's okay. He'd watched this woman for 2 years, tried to help her both because it was his job and because she had become his good friend. For Jean, some days were better than others. The bad days hurt Colden, made him feel incompetent and powerless. He always reminded himself, however, that she was still alive, and that was really something. She tried to kill herself twice, and he personally stopped both attempts. Jean blinked once more, perhaps trying to see through her hair, then threw her arms around Colden in a crushing hug. He returned the hug, patting her fears away as if she were his daughter, and not 20 years his senior. I have dream again, Mr. Colden. It's okay, Colden said. He felt her tears on his neck and shoulder. Jean called every man Mr., although with her thick accent, it always sounded like Mista. He'd never been able to convince her to call him by his first name. It's okay, Jean. Why don't you see if you can get back to sleep? She pulled away from him and wiped tears with the back of her hand. No, she said. No sleep. Jan, come on, just try. I know you haven't slept more than 6 hours in the past 3 days. No. Can't you at least try? No. She turned and slid out from under the covers, surprisingly graceful for a woman who carried 250 pounds in a 5'6" frame. Colden realized too late that she wasn't wearing any pajama bottoms. He turned away, embarrassed, but John didn't seem to notice. As long as I get some work done, she said. We have another immune response test this morning. Colden rubbed his eyes, partially because it kept him from looking like he was trying not to look. He stared at the familiar chessboard sitting on her dresser. She beat him 97 times in a row, but who was counting? Her bottle of medication sat next to the chessboard. A clear strip running down the bottle side let him see how much fluid remained. Across the strip, written in neat black letters, were dates in descending order. November 1st on top, November 30th on the bottom. The fluid leveled out at November 7th. Yes, I am taking my meds, Jean said. I may be crazy, but I am not stupid. But was she taking them? Things had been getting worse. Her nightmares growing in frequency and intensity. Don't say that about yourself, Jean. I don't think you're crazy. You also do not think you are handsome, Jean said. This proves your judgment is questionable. The zip of a pant zipper told him it was okay to look her way once again. She was pulling on a Hawaiian shirt, lime green with yellow azaleas, over her sweat-stained white t-shirt. Heavy black hair still hung wetly in front of her face, but through that hair he could see the dark rings under her bloodshot, haunted eyes. She walked to her bizarre computer desk, sat down, and switched on the power. 7 flat panel monitors flared, coating her in a whitish glare. The setup surrounded her in a semicircle of screens. 3 down at the desk level, side monitors angled in. 4 monitors in the row above that, slanted down and around her, so she actually had to turn her head from left to right to see them all. Holding put the medicine bottle back and walked over to the computer station. All 7 screens showed flowing strings of the letters A, G, T, and C. Sometimes the letters themselves were in different colors, sometimes bright hues lit up long strings, and sometimes both. To Colding, it looked like multicolored digital pewter. The immune response was the hurdle that the scientific trinity of Janata's geniuses, Klaus Ruhmkorff, Erika Holl, and John, simply couldn't surpass. It was the last big theoretical hurdle that stood between Janata and saving hundreds of thousands of lives every year. Now that John was awake, she'd prepare for the test, or, more likely, prepare for yet another failure and the resultant wrath of Dr. Klaus Ruhmkorff. "Do you need anything?" Colding asked. John shook her head, her attention already fixed on one of the big monitors. Colding knew from experience that she probably wouldn't register another word that he said. Without looking away from the scrolling letters, John opened a small dorm room fridge that sat under her desk and pulled out a bottle of Dr. Pepper. Her hand shook a little. She opened it and took a long drink. "Well, I guess I'm off to bed," Colding said. "Holler if you need anything, okay?" John grunted, but Colding didn't know if it was a reaction to him or to a piece of data. He'd almost made it out of the room when she stopped him. "Mr. Colding." He turned. John pointed to one of the computer screens. "I see the date is November 7th, she said. "I am sorry. I wish I had known her." Tears welled up instantly. He swallowed against the knot in his throat, clenched his teeth against the pain in his chest. "Thank you," he said. John nodded, then turned back to her multi-monitor array. Colding left before she could see him cry. 3 years to the day since Clarissa had died. Sometimes it seemed like a tick of the clock, like he'd kissed her just yesterday. Other times he had trouble remembering what she looked like, as if he'd never really known her at all. At all times, though, every minute of every day, the ache of her absence hung on him like an anchor. He pretended to cough, giving him an excuse to wipe his eyes in case Gunther was watching him in the hall cams. Colding walked toward his room. The research facility still reminded him of a school building. Cinder block walls painted a neutral gray, speckled tile floor, fire extinguishers paired with fire axes in each hall. There were even little handles with the words "Pull Here" mounted shoulder high, although those weren't for the fire alarm. They would close the airlocks tight in case of any viral contamination. Colding reached his room and shut himself inside. "All secure, Gun." "I like the part where she said she's not stupid," Gunther said. "The understatement of the century." "Tell me about it." "Get back to bed, boss. I'll keep an eye on her." Colding nodded even though he was alone in his room. There was no way he'd get back to sleep. Not today. Besides, John's dreams were getting worse. The last 2 times that had happened, she'd started hallucinating a few weeks later, then finally tried to kill herself. For her most recent attempt, she'd locked herself in a bathroom and filled it with nitrogen gas. Her assistant, Tim Feely, realized what she was doing and called for help. Colding had broken in far ahead of the proverbial nick of time, but how close she came to success wasn't the point. The pattern was the thing. Nightmares, then hallucinations, then a suicide attempt. Dr. Ruhmkorff had already adjusted John's meds, but who knew if that would work? Colding had to report this. Klaus Ruhmkorff was brilliant. Erika Holl was a legend, but without Liu Zhandan, the project simply ceased to exist. That's what we're in. Well, we're all on into the Q&A. Everything's wide open.